What's up everybody, Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic, and I have yet another collection update, and yeah, we're still on that Florida thing. But hey, I got a new room that I'm trying out as a separate studio here. I might still do stuff down the CD collection room, but that one's going to be under construction here in a bit, because yeah, I'm going to have to get some more shelves down there. But for now, we're up here, and yeah, I got another giant batch of music to go through here. And yeah, kind of all over the map on this one as well. So yeah, let's just get down to it. Mayhem, Wolf's Lair Abyss. This is the second EP overall from these Norwegian black metal legends, possibly more legendary for the extracurriculars than they are for the music. That's up for debate. But this was their first release after D Mysterious in terms of a studio offering, and preceded Grand Declaration of War, which I am not a huge fan of, but this was the return of Maniac on vocals, who was their original vocalist at one point, and obviously this was their first one since the death of Euronymous. So yeah, kind of getting back together and doing their best not to murder anybody at this point. But yeah, this EP is interesting. I'm not really sure if I like the opening track, the Vortex Void of Infinity, as it's just a droning synth and war trumpets and Maniac howling and screaming. It's more or less an intro, but overall, like, it kind of gets right down to just straightforward black metal. I think the production on here is uneven. Now, it might sound different on the original. This is the 2019 edition from Soul Cellar Records, but this originally came out in '97. But on this one, I feel like the drums often get buried. But as far as like everything else, yeah, the guitars are icy cold. The melodies are sinister and dark. Maniac sounds like a man possessed, but there's some really cool melodies in here. Like I Am Thy Labyrinth. The end of that, I think, is probably the most catchy moment on this entire EP. But there's also some catchy spots on Fall of the Seraphas and Ancient Skin. I think those are pretty solid. There's points on here where Maniac kind of sounds a bit more like Attila, like he does the weird kind of groaning vocals and just sounds creepy. He also sounds like a feral cat occasionally, so I mean, he's kind of all over the damn place. I mean, his name's Maniac. I kind of expect maniacal vocals. Now, I know the song Symbols of Blood Swords is intended to be like part one of, you know, a series of songs on Grand Declaration of War. Again, I don't like that album very much. I haven't listened to it in forever. I don't know if I want to go back to it. But outside of that, the rest of this kind of feels more like just straightforward black metal. Now, they also have one version of Ancient Skin in here that is from the 1997 version, and I have to say I kind of like the production of that one a bit better. It feels a little bit more full and a little bit more open and kind of cavernous sounding, and it's also a little bit shorter. I think it kind of trims down some of the extra atmosphere on it, and honestly, I kind of dig that one a little bit more. There's also a re-recorded version of Necrolust on there, which honestly sounds pretty fucking solid too. Overall, I think this EP is pretty solid. It's straightforward black metal. It definitely doesn't venture too far into the weird world of Grand Declaration of War, so I feel like they were maybe a little bit more focused on the black metal on this one and not just trying to be, I don't know, weird as fuck. Again, it's been a while since I've listened to that album, but still not really a fan. But yeah, check this one out. Pretty decent. Night Demon, Outsider. This is the third album from this Ventura, California heavy metal act. I own their first two albums, Curse of the Damned and Darkness Remains. Huge fan of those. These guys have a great throwback heavy metal sound, like kind of going back to like, you know, early Iron Maiden, Angel Witch. Take your pick of new album bands, like they kind of have that sound. Very just straightforward production. It sounds very organic. Big fucking riffs, loads of harmonies. These guys know how to write a killer fucking hook. Now, a lot of their stuff is generally more like up-tempo. You get a lot of like, you know, more just in-your-face rockers and, you know, kind of thrashy sections. Like you get some of the End of the Wrath and Rebirth and Obsidian, which I think is a fantastic fucking song. But they get a little bit doomier on here, which I was really surprised by. Beyond the Grave is almost like a Candlemass / Pentagram-esque song. Big doomy hooks. It's more somber, it's more downtrodden, and it is absolutely fantastic. And the interesting 1-2 punch of Awake and The Wrath, I think, is awesome. Awake is a more somber, kind of dirgy song with more clean guitars. There's not a lot of percussion. It just feels very personal and, you know, very dark, and then you get to The Wrath, and this one's like the big epic on this album. I want to say it's close to the 10-minute mark. It might actually be longer than that, but absolutely love the song. It's a great build. There's really good transitions. There's even a cool thrashy section towards the end. But the thing that I really like about this band are the vocals. The vocals aren't necessarily your more traditional new album vocals. They're a little bit more of just like a straightforward kind of like 90s rock or 70s rock sort of just, you know, singing voice. Like there's a gruffness to it. It's bellowed, but it's very tuneful. There's great vocal harmonies on here. This album just kind of does everything right when it comes down to like that classic retro sound, and I dig it from front to back. Baseline, I think I would just describe this as feel-good metal. Like you just listen to it for the riffs, the hooks, the melodies, and yeah, despite how it has some more downtrodden songs, it still knows how to like bring you back up with like a giant crescendo or a giant melodic hook or an anthemic chorus. It kind of just does all those really well. If you love, God, again, like classic heavy metal, I would even say like, you know, Def Leppard's first album, Killers, you know, shit like that. Definitely check this out. Check out their other 2 albums too. They're both really good, but I think this could be their best one yet. I don't know. I've been jamming this one a lot, and it's just a lot of fucking fun to listen to. So check it out. Night in Gales, Nailwork. This is the 3rd album from this German melodic death metal act. I really like their debut, Towards the Twilight. I think it's kind of an underrated mellow death album in general. Like, it's still definitely a lot of like At the Gates worship, but it's done insanely well. And I saw this one in the used bin. I figured, hey, why not get some more fucking Nightingales and see what the rest of their albums are all about. And this one is a little odd. Opens up really well with the title track, and you get some really solid riffs. The guitar tone is kind of thrashy. In fact, a lot of this kind of reminded me of early Soilwork. I mean, you know, with the name like Nailwork, like I kind of expected it. And yeah, I mean, it sounds like those first 2 Soilwork albums, but also The Haunted. There's a lot more thrash metal to their sound overall. You definitely get that on the oddly titled Blades to Laughter and the even more oddly titled All Scissors Smile. I mean, I suppose they do. You hold them at a certain angle. But as this album went on, I started to have some issues with it. Production-wise, I don't like the sound of the drums. They just sound really flat. And vocally, this is possibly too all over the place. Like, you have, you know, harsh screams, low growls, spoken word. There are some guest vocals on here as well. And the clean vocals on here, I don't think are very good. As far as backing up the melodies they were going for in terms of like a big vocal hook, yeah, no, they don't really do much. And there are times on here where clean vocals could have really helped, or like at least like, you know, better clean vocals. Like the ill-fitting cover of Black Velvet on here. Originally done by Alana Miles, most people know this song. They just kind of Swedish death metal it up, and no. It just doesn't work, and I had to fight every instinct to actually skip that song when I was going over this album. I think the only thing that kept me going was the fact that track 10 is called Down the Throat, and I kind of just wanted to hear how cringy a song called Down the Throat sounded. And, well, it's kind of as unremarkable as the rest of this album is. That's the main thing on here is that, yeah, there are some solid riffs on here, and there's the occasional, like, really solid mellow death melody, but all of it is just kind of bland. Like, for example, the song How to Eat a Scythe, it just sounds like, you know, early In Flames mixed with, like, modern Metallica. Like, the last few albums of Metallica, which you could argue those are serviceable. I know there are people out there that are huge fans of them. I still think that they're okay, but that's all this album gets to. It gets to okay, and then the rest of the time it's just kind of meh. I still want to check out more by this band. I have other albums by them that I do like. In fact, I have their most recent one. I did a review for it fucking forever ago, and I really enjoyed that. So I just kind of see this one as a bit of a hiccup in their discography, but again, if you like At the Gates, The Haunted, Soilwork, bad covers of Black Velvet, this is definitely that. So yeah, check it out. Paradise Lost, Believe in Nothing. This is the 8th album overall from these UK Death Doom legends. Well, not Death Doom on this one. This is more or less their, like, again, alternative gamble they kind of took around like 1 Second and Host. This is, in fact, the album that followed Host. And honestly, I don't mind Host. I don't mind 1 Second either. But this was the only one I was missing in their discography. I have everything else, and now I have it completed, and This is probably my least favorite album by them. If I'm being honest, like, you know, again, that could change, but I don't think it will. This definitely follows along the lines of Host, but whereas Host actually still had some heaviness to it, and granted it sounded more like Depeche Mode and Nine Inch Nails, you know, stuff like that, a little bit more alternative metal leaning. This one kind of just goes for like industrial rock. The guitars really just kind of take a backseat as far as the tone, like it's notably thinner. It feels more vocally driven, and almost all these songs kind of have the same song structure. Like they were all written to be singles. Now granted, a good chunk of Host and 1 Second, they were definitely written to be singles as well, but I think they had a little bit more of a creative drive on those. Like there were some interesting hooks, some dynamics that actually made the songs stand apart. This feels more uninspired musically, but more inspired in terms of commercially, I guess. Songs like Fader, honestly, it has more in common with like Oasis in spots. There's even some like chanted Enya-ish, you know, vocals on there. It's definitely meant to be a single, and as much as like this is still a dreary album, just like every Paradise Lost album is, this kind of misses like that, you know, layer of like ominous darkness. It feels very light and airy for the most part, and that just doesn't suit them. I mean, I guess there's some heavier moments on Look at Me Now, Sell It to the World, No Reason. Heavier, but like rock heavy. Sell It to the World does have some strings on it, as well as the song Divided. I think that's kind of cool, but they would employ strings a lot better on other albums. Honestly, like the two that really stood out to me were the bonus tracks, Gone and Leave This Alone. Gone actually has a little bit more like doom to it, like it's a little bit more sinister and just kind of creepy sounding, and Leave This Alone actually has a solid pop rock hook that's really fucking good. If it wasn't Paradise Lost, I would probably like it more. I think if it was like a separate project like their band Host, which I think is fucking awesome. But yeah, this one is kind of the ugly duckling in the discography, at least in my opinion so far. I mean, Host again took some gambles, but again, it felt like they committed to it, like this was what they were about. This one just feels like, well, this is the sequel. Let's just kind of do the same thing, except, I don't know, just strip it back even more and make it more listenable for people that don't like any of our music at all, or at least the music we're really known for. I don't know. I'd still say check it out again if you like stuff like Stabbing Westward, God, maybe like Dishwalla. Yeah, this one's definitely not on par with, you know, the rest of the discography, but still it's worth listening to. So yeah, check it out. All right, we have a pair here from Old Man's Child. We have their second album, The Pagan Prosperity, and their third album, Ill-Natured Spiritual Invasion. This is a Norwegian black metal band often associated with one key member, Galder, who also spends a lot of time in Dimmu Borgir as well, and maybe a little bit comparable to Dimmu Borgir in a lot of ways, namely that this is very melodic black metal. In fact, I've heard people said that this is black metal for people that don't like black metal, and to a degree I get it. Now, I got into this band around In Defiance of Existence. I heard a song on Century Media Sampler. I believe it was one of the Identity ones, and I can't remember exactly which one, but I ended up really digging it, and I started picking up all their albums. And then I just stopped for some reason and kind of forgot about their earlier stuff. Now, The Pagan Prosperity is different from this one in the fact that Galder pretty much did everything on here but drums, and he actually had a full band here. And musically, this one's a little bit more, I don't know, kind of aloof. Like, it explores a lot more styles. There's a little bit more variety in here. Like, you get, you know, icy cold sections, blast beats, and, you know, tremolos, and, you know, it sounds evil and spooky, and Galder does a really good job with his vocals. In fact, sometimes when he does his clean mutterings, they almost sounds like Till Lindemann, which, man, he's not a fun one to bring up here lately. You get a lot of thrashy / classic heavy metal riffs on songs like Behind the Mask and Soul Possessed. Really kind of drives the song. There's a lot of fun gallops on those. Doommaker definitely has more of a mellow death sort of flair to it, like kind of that same sound that Dissection had. It kind of bridges the gap between melodic death metal and black metal, and does a really solid job. Even has some like deeper vocals on there, kind of showing off that there's a little bit of death metal to this. And that's kind of the thing on this one versus this one. I would say this is not purely black metal. It's blackened, and it kind of just goes with whatever genre they're kind of, you know, aping at the moment, like whether or not it's thrash metal or death metal or mellow death or even like a little bit of doom. There's a blackened tinge to it. It makes for an interesting listen, and I do like the variety on it. But this one is definitely the one that I like the most out of this batch, because not only is it just Galder doing all the music, he brought in a drummer, and he brought in Gene Hoglan. And Gene Hoglan needs zero introduction, even though I feel like I'm kind of introducing him there. This album is flat out badass and more unified stylistically. The riffs are tighter. This has a more aggressive, dark, sinister vibe across the board. It's less playful about like bouncing around to metal subgenres. It's more or less a direct attack. The song Fall of Man was another one that I heard on a Century Media sampler, and I fucking absolutely love it. But honestly, I really dig every song in here. Every song in here is not only more aggressive, it's just as hooky. They sacrifice none of the melody on here. And the last two tracks in here are probably two of my favorites. Really solid breakdowns on them. My Evil Revelations and Thy Servant. Thy Servant might be the catchiest song on the album. I think the melodies are just absolutely infectious on here. This whole album just fucking whoops ass. And again, it's, you know, not like the raw, blast beat driven, super satanic black metal. Like, this is more about riffs and melodies and hooks. So I can kind of see that whole, it's black metal for people that don't like black metal, but I like black metal and I like, you know, all the other shit they're doing in here. So yeah, this is just good fucking metal. If you have not checked out either one of these, this one's really good. This one is fucking awesome from start to finish. Definitely check them both out, and go check out some more Old Man's Child. I mean, they did break up in 2009, but I think they have reformed, and maybe they'll come out with a new album. Who knows? Either way, check them out. Good stuff. Paroxysm Scars of the Art. This is the second album from this Canadian death metal act. Actually, this was a blind buy. I looked it up, so it was Canadian death metal, and that was kind of generally enough for me. I mean, most Canadian death metal seems to be pretty fucking badass. And I was right. This was absolutely awesome. This is just intense, like modern death metal, but I mean, a little bit of an element of brutal death metal to it. There's definitely some suffocation, but also stuff that sounds like Hour of Penance, Hideous Divinity, maybe a little bit of Hate Eternal in there too. This is pretty much just built on brutal but catchy fucking riffing left and right. I mean, the suffocation vibes are absolutely huge on the song Revelation is Denied. Like, that song is an instant hook, lots of triplet picking, blast beats. You get a lot of that Mike Smith style sort of blast beat where it's that full extension, just pummeling fucking snare hit. It's somewhat techy, but it is more focused on the riffs. Like, you have some really cool tapping sections, some profound emotional paroxysm. I kind of like how they tied the band name into the song title there. But there's just a lot of just flat out riff and groove on songs like Falling into Utopia, The Meaning of Rotting. This whole album is just packed full of riffs. Great vocals on here. They alternate between highs and lows really well, and every song just kind of goes to the throat. There's really not a lot of pretense. You do get some like cool build-ups when it comes down to like some bridges on here, but most of the time it is just riff after riff, and it is heavy and without mercy from start to finish. Now, sadly, when I found out about this band, I was like, holy shit, this band's awesome, man. I hope they're coming out with something new. And nope, they broke up in 2016. But they do have, I believe, 2 other albums, so I definitely want to hunt down to those. This is just gnarly fucking death metal, flat out. If you love stuff like, again, Suffocation, Hideous Divinity, Hour of Penance, shit like that, very riff-driven, very powerful, very just aggro as fuck, definitely check out this album, and I'm definitely going to hunt down more of their stuff for damn sure. So yeah, check it out. Pathogen, Miscreants of Bloodlusting Aberrations. This is the second album from this Philippines-based death metal act. I actually picked up, I believe, their third album when I was in Florida last time, Forged in the Crucible of Death. I really enjoyed that. I saw this one. This is the 2013 reissue of the album on CD through Dunkel Eye Productions. And yeah, I had to get it, and Yeah, this is just gross old school death metal, lots of morbid angel worship, lots of incantation sort of atmosphere. It feels creepy, dingy, and evil. The production on it is very raw and murky, but not necessarily done like poorly. Like it's definitely very, kind of muddy, but kind of like in an endearing way. The swampy guitars in here kind of fit with the vibe overall, which you get a lot of that apocalyptic riffing that Incantation's known for. Some very Trey-ish solos, which are just wild and bending and chaotic, but occasionally very tuneful. And even the vocals kind of sound a bit like David Vincent in spots. And there's some really cool dynamics on here as well in terms of kind of switching it up a bit. Heretical Wisdom actually has like a more Death Doom start. Again, a little bit more of that incantation style, but you have like some flat out thrashy songs in here. Abyss of Perpetual Upheaval, Uranium Messiah, Ideological Strife. All these kind of have like a little bit of that early death thrash sound, like Scream Bloody Gore, Seven Churches. It's kind of just woven in there. And again, with the sort of creepy, kind of dingy sound of this album, it makes it sound more like visceral and a little bit more evil. I mean, even the song Leviathan kind of feels like an autopsy worship song. It's a little bit punkier, it's a little bit dirtier feeling. But I was kind of surprised by Uranium Messiah, mainly because all of a sudden it gets a lot more melodic. In fact, I would say it's probably the most melodic song on the album, but it's only melodic in one certain section, namely the lead. The lead on it is decidedly, just very tuneful and very pleasant to the ear, where a lot of these leads are dive bombs, dissonant, ugly, but, very technical and actually fitting in the music. Yeah, I really dig this one. This was kind of an easy one. I liked their album that came out, well, technically before this, but the one I got last time. Saw this, I was like, yeah, I'm probably going to dig this. And honestly, I don't have a lot of bands from the Philippines overall, and as far as like death metal acts from the Philippines, this is probably the one that stands out the most to me so far. Excellent stuff. If you're a fan of Incantation, Autopsy, Death, maybe a little bit of Immolation too, definitely check this out. Check out Forged in the Crucible of Death too. That one's a really fucking good one as well. But the main point is just check out this band in general. This is just solid fucking death metal. Praxis Metatron. This is the third album from this experimental rock / metal / prog / avant-garde trio. I don't know, there's a lot of stuff going on in this one. This is a 3-piece in the studio comprised of one Buckethead on guitars, Brain, formerly of Primus, on drums, and Bill Laswell, who I really wasn't familiar with, but apparently he's a hell of a producer and a hell of a fucking bassist. Now, Brain and Buckethead were enough to entice me to check this one out. I know I heard Tommy from the past, talk about this band. He's a huge Buckethead fan, and he's a huge Bill Laswell fan, and he's probably a huge Brain fan too, because he loves Primus. So I figured, why not check it out? And this album is flat out weird. And, like, not weird in the way that really kind of like drew me in. It drew me in just because it was very strange in terms of its construction, in terms of how wildly different the songs could be, and the production being odd. There's lots of weird samples. Of course, you have some great guitar work because you have Buckethead. You have great drum work because you have Brain. And I mean, as far as I know, Bill Laswell is pretty incredible, just judging by this. But the songs are just disjointed and strange. Like, you have some more metalish songs here and there. You have like kind of more funk sections. You have just experimental noise sections where it's just sort of droning ambience and maybe like some weird guitar feedback. I should have wrote down the entire track listing because, like, legit, all it says in the back are the members of the band, and that's not enough for me. But also, I don't want to go fishing through this CD booklet figuring out the names of tracks in here, but I can tell you this overall album is just strange. Musically impressive, especially in sections. I know there's like one really long track on here that I thought was just a hell of a ride, but a lot of this is just very disjointed and definitely screams experimental. Like, it screams, hey, let's just kind of jam and see where it takes us, and even if it takes us to someplace weird, let's see if we can kind of figure a way out of it. Some of these songs have the vibe of like, we've painted ourselves into a musical corner, how do we get out of it? I think sometimes they just decide to end the song and move on to the next weird moment. But strangely enough, though, as one piece, it kind of does flow well. It's really hard to make out the track breaks on here. Like, there were moments on here where I was just writing down notes, and then I looked up and I was on the next track. I was like, wait a minute, where did that last song end? I don't know. It's a very strange album. I do want to check out more by this band, but in terms of like figuring out what the hell this band is about, I don't know if this was the one to start with. I heard the earlier albums might be a little bit more digestible, and this one was just weirder than hell, even by their standards. Either way, if you're looking for something truly out there and very experimental and weird and kind of metal, maybe more rock, I don't know. It's really hard to describe. Just check it out, and I don't know, maybe you'll leave understanding it better than I did, or maybe you'll listen to it and be just as confused as I was. Either way, it's worth checking out just for the weirdness of it all. Primus Conspiranoid. This is the 5th EP overall from Primus. California oddities. It's kind of hard to even describe what they do. It's funky, it's weird. It's Primus. And surprisingly, I completely forgot about this one coming out. I've been a fan of this band since Sailing the Seas of Cheese back when I was in high school. I remember seeing the video for Jerry Was a Race Car Driver and Time of the Cat and being just blown away by how weird this band was, and holy shit, Les Claypool was such an amazing bass player. He still fucking is. It's still on display. It's always on display on a Primus album. But as of late, I haven't been the biggest fan of some of their output. In fact, the last one that I really loved was Green Naugahyde. Fantastic album. I absolutely fucking love that one. But the rest of the albums, the, Primus, the Chocolate Factory one, not really my thing. The Desaturating 7 was, I don't know, I felt like kind of like a half effort, like it was almost an EP, but it was a little bit too long, and I don't know, the songs just really didn't jump out. But this one, not a bad EP at all. The main standout in here is Conspiranoia, which is essentially the title track. It's almost a 12-minute jam with quite possibly one of the funkiest grooves that Primus has had in years. This main groove that sort of bounces through here is just so good. I love Tim Alexander's drum work on that song in particular. Lots of fun hi-hat hits and clever cymbal accents. Dude's just fucking awesome. And Larry Lalonde's throwing in these cool, funky, like kind of psychedelic riffs. It's definitely one of their more psychedelic songs overall, and theme-wise, pretty interesting because it's all about, conspiracy theories and how, people are fucking nuts for them here lately. Like, just pick one. Pick one, and to someone, it is the absolute God's honest fucking truth. It's amazing how the internet is a bountiful source of information, literally at the fingertips of everyone out there, but it's also an endless supply of stupid, and I'm gonna get back to this EP before I go on a fucking long tangent of how much I hate fucking conspiracy theories. Anyway, the other two songs in here, Follow the Fool and Aaron on the Side of Caution, again, fun song titles. Follow the Fool has such a fun, cool bounce to it. There's a little bit of extra percussion to it. Definitely driven by the bouncing bass line in here. And Aaron on the Side of Caution, again, another funky little jam on there. This whole EP is awesome, actually. I really dug this one, and I hadn't really dug a lot of the, more recent output from Primus, and this one kind of recaptures it. I really wish it was longer. I really wish they had more songs in the vein of definitely the title track in terms of a longer release in here, but who knows, maybe they'll get to work on a full length. But yeah, this gives me hope for some future Primus releases. It feels like they kind of captured some of that energy that was missing on the last couple. But yeah, if you're a big fan of Primus, there's a good chance you probably already have this, or at least have listened to it. I completely fucking blanked on it, but either way, definitely check this out because it's Primus, and Primus is fun. And yeah, that's pretty much all I need to say. Fucking Primus rules. Or for at least the fans out there that definitely know Primus sucks, and that's kind of why we love them. So check it out. Propane, The Foul Taste of Freedom. This is the debut album from this New York-based groove metal / hardcore act. I've been meaning to check out some Propane for a while. I listened to them before in the past. I just never picked up any of their albums. I saw this one and I figured, hey, why not start at the start? And yeah, this is very meat and potatoes, straightforward, kind of groovy, hardcore. I mean, There's really not much to it. Now this features Gary, or is it Greg? I think it's Gary Meskill, formerly of Crumbsuckers, another band that I need to get more stuff by. And this was his big leap into the 90s with the whole groove metal trend, and groove metal was really hit or miss. And for the most part, I'm going to go ahead and say that this was a miss. There are some good songs in here, especially the ones that have like a little bit more of a thrashy backbone to it. Like a lot of the stuff on the back half of the album, but man, when this album is bad, it's pretty bad. First off, when it comes down to like universally bad things in here, it's the lyrics. The lyrics are some of the dumbest, just edgy teenager sort of lyrics I think I've heard in a while. Like, even as a teen, I probably would have thought that some of these were a little dumb, especially on Death on the Dance Floor. Dude, I just can't with that song. It's almost proto-nu metal. The lyrics are essentially raps. It's about them talking about their mosh pits, I guess, and it is really dumb. I thought I was listening to like a dollar store version of Biohazard at a certain point in there. Pound for Pound has like some kind of dumb hip-hop loops that are peppered in for effect, and they really do nothing on here. And when it comes down to like the overall sound of the album, production's like super dry. It just feels very empty, like everything is in its own space, and it just feels like there's like not a lot of interaction between like all the instruments. Like, I don't know, it just feels just sterile. For the most part, this is just like kind of like bar band hardcore, except for maybe Every Good Boy Does Fine. That one has like horns, and I don't know, like horns just don't belong on an album where everything else is just kind of, you know, bare bones and kind of by the numbers. It feels like a combination of like Ren Fair and Sick of It All, and yeah, no, it doesn't really work. Again, there's some songs towards the end of the album, like Rawhead I think is pretty good, and Johnny Black. But for the most part, this is not a great debut. And I still want to give this band a chance because I know I've heard stuff like after this that was really good. It's just, you know, this debut, man, I'm glad I didn't get this when I was younger, because I probably would have not bothered getting any of their other stuff, but I'm still going to get some of their other stuff in the future. But yeah, this is not great. It's kind of just like a window back in time to, you know, early 90s groove metal and how really hit or miss it was. Still, I urge you to check it out, form your own opinions. Who knows, you might really like this. I'm going to check out later albums, though. I'm going to give this band more of a chance. I know this band gets a lot of respect in the underground, but this one's definitely a miss for me. But who knows? Again, you might really dig it, so check it out. Profanator Deathplagued. This is the second album from this Mexican thrash metal slash blackened thrash slash death thrash act. I don't know. It is intense thrash metal, whatever it is. There are occasional death metal vocals on here, which kind of make me think maybe it's a little bit more on the death thrash side, but at the same time, you get some very blackened thrash energy, like blast beats and some, you know, more distant riffing, but holy shit, this album is fucking awesome. Now, I own their fourth album, Fallen, and I really dig that one, but I like this one a little bit more. It's more raw, it's speedier than hell. Like, every song is just flying. You have awesome fucking galloping riffs everywhere. The very Slayer-esque vocals just kind of propel it. It sounds pissed off and fucking vicious at all times. And I like the fact that they do drop down and do like death metal vocals every now and then, especially on some ferociously chuggy sections on here. I think some of the best work on here shows up on the Triarchy of Loss section. Crack Conjuring, Voices in My Head, and Narcolatry. There's a lot of like drug stuff in here and some samples that definitely go with it. Like, you get what sounds like a demon smoking crack in here as a sample. And there are some interesting bits of atmosphere, but this whole run really ties together this theme of just drugs and evil, I guess. But this is where you start hearing a lot more of the death metal elements. It's a fiercely dark section of this album, but it is absolutely packed with some of the gnarliest, grossest fucking riffs on this album. I do think at that point in the album, it does start to fall in love with the atmosphere a bit much, where you get like atmospheric breaks pretty often on every track after that. I mean, Bad Girls does have like a movie like intro to it. It sounds like a Mexican flick I have never seen, but I will go ahead and assume that it is about bad girls. But it seems like after that you start hearing more atmospheric, like sample sections or setups, and that did get a little bit old. But man, when they get down to the songs, like the thrashy gallops on unfrightful, so dead sons of a bitch. I mean, there might have been something lost in translation in that song title. But that song is absolutely amazing. And to reinforce all of that vicious Slayer energy that is all over here, they do cap it off with an awesome cover of Slayer's Epidemic, one of my favorite tracks off of Rain and Blood, which, well, I mean, every track on that album is one of my favorites. But yeah, from start to finish, I fucking love this. This is paced like a fucking panic attack. It is just intense, does not lay off the fucking gas for 1 second, but it doesn't get like super repetitive. It stays energetic, it stays riffy, it stays sinister, and I absolutely fucking love it. If you love Slayer, Sadist, Possessed, just shit like that, like just fast, angry, intense, and fucking evil sounding fucking metal, definitely check this out. Absolutely awesome fucking album. Alright, we got a pair here from Queensryche. Some classic Washington heavy metal / prog metal. I mean, they're pretty much legends. If you're a metalhead, there's a good chance you fucking know these guys, and if not, I'm a little surprised. Anyway, we have their self-titled debut EP here, and we have their second full-length album, Rage for Order. And both of these are pretty damn different. Now, I got into Queensryche with Empire, much like a lot of people probably got into Queensryche with Empire, because that album was fucking huge. I mean, Silent Lucidity, I still fucking love that song. Jet City Woman, the title track. There's a lot of killer tracks on that album, and I think a lot of that starts with this one in terms of the shift in style, because this is almost a flat-out new album with maybe like a slightly more proggy leaning on at least one track. I would say The Lady Wore Black is probably the most proggy song on here, because the rest of this is very much like Angel Witch, early Iron Maiden. Lots of great riffs, lots of great guitar harmonies, lots of fucking scorching leads. And Chris DeGarma is pretty super well known for his guitar playing ability. It is definitely on show here. And fucking Jeff Tate is fucking amazing on this album. His vocal range is absolutely insane. I mean, it's insane on this one too. It's pretty much insane on most of the Queensryche albums. It's not that great now, but I mean, yeah, he's much older. But yeah, I really dig this one. It has, again, that kind of classic new album feel. Great songwriting, great hooks on it, but there's like a classic heavy metal bite to it where the songs are fast and more intense, and they don't feel like they're essentially grabbing for radio play. They're just writing pretty much songs based around the bands that influenced them. The production on here is solid. It sounds very analog, very warm. I absolutely love the opening riff to Knight Rider. There's so much Tony Iommi all over that. It feels like something you would hear on like the Dio era Sabbath albums especially. And the last track, Prophecy, kind of has like a little bit of a classic rock swagger to it. Like there's a little bit of like Thin Lizzy or Scorpions to it, like early Scorpions. Really solid stuff on here. I really like this one, but I like classic heavy metal. This one, notably different, and I probably should pick up The Warning eventually, because that's the one that a lot of the old heads talk about in terms of like classic Queensryche. This is the one that followed it, and you could definitely tell that they were chasing more accessibility, like right out of the gate with Walk in the Shadows. But man, that's a catchy fucking song. The production here is notably more polished, more like well produced. There's more lavish synths. I don't think there were that many synths on here at all, but man, here they are very present, especially on I Dream and Infrared, which I kind of feel like was a precursor to Jet City Woman. It kind of has that same song building dynamic. You do have some heavier numbers on here like Surgical Strike and Chemical Youth, We Are Rebellion. There's a little bit more like bite to them. I think the guitars sound kind of really pushed back in here in favor of, well, I mean, Jeff Tate's soaring vocals and, again, more of that lush synth work. And you can definitely tell that this album, they were more about the hook, like a big vocal hook, They wanted to write some singles as well as write some slightly more proggy songs in here, which there are some proggier numbers. The Killing Words, while it is like a little bit ballady, definitely has like some more proggy elements to it. And honestly, I think it's a really solid song. But overall, you can definitely tell this was becoming a more vocally driven band overall because they were chasing the hooks. And thematically, they were definitely pushing some more headier concepts, like bordering on sci-fi. I mean, well, the overall look of the band, I mean, at least at this point, they could all afford nice leather trench coats. My mom had one of those way back. Yeah, the 80s were so fashionable. But yeah, both of these I think are really good, albeit very different eras of the band. Like, this era honestly didn't seem to last very long because I believe The Warning was definitely a mix between both of these. Like, you still had a lot of the classic heavy metal, but you also had more of the prog and more of the, you know, big vocal hooks, which, I mean, with Jeff Tate, you should probably write some good vocal hooks because otherwise you're kind of wasting the dude's fucking talents. But overall, I think I like this one a little bit more. It's got, again, more of that classic heavy metal sound. This is still really good. I think Mindcrime might have been a bit better just because I think all the themes really worked on that one, and just how that album flows is just fucking awesome. Like, they really fucking thought that one out. But yeah, both of these really solid. Glad I picked it up. I'm gonna try to find The Warning, and then I don't know, I'm gonna be a little bit more selective about the Queensryche that I pick up after that. I know, like, the discography gets a little spotty at a certain point. But yeah, if you haven't checked these out, recommend them. More classic heavy metal, more power prog, but still kind of maybe a little radio rockish. I don't know. Still pretty damn good though. But yeah, check them both out. Repugnant Hecatome or Hecatomb, not entirely sure. Anyway, this is the debut EP from this Swedish death metal act. Featured at one point Tobias Forge. He was the main songwriter behind this band. I actually did a retro review of that band not too long ago with their debut album and only full-length Epitome of Darkness, and that album rips, and guess what? So does this one. Now, this is the Hammerheart reissue, and I believe their reissues are generally remastered too, but this is just raw, filthy Swedish death metal. Again, very much in the vein of, well, I would say Nihilist a little bit too, but I would also say, of course, Entombed and Dismembered, but there is a raw, sort of like punky, almost kind of just thrashy nature to a lot of their songs. They're very explosive, very fast, and it's very raw sounding. Honestly, it sounds more like 1989 than 1999 when it comes down to just the vibe of this. It just kind of has a little bit of that 80s dirt still on it. But naturally, I absolutely love that. I think the songs in here are awesome. Now, I will say that this EP has an intro and an outro. On EPs, I see that as very unnecessary, but there's some cool atmosphere they used to build into the songs on here, and, you know, it's not the worst thing, but it just feels like extra. All the songs in here, though, I think are fantastic. From Beyond the Grave, Morbid Ways. But the song Rapturous Genocide is probably my favorite. It shows off a lot more songwriting dynamics. I love how it fades in on this kind of sinister lead melody. It's a little squawky sounding, but I like how this song starts building up and fading in behind it. And it's just a riffy beast of an album, a little bit more groove to it. Honestly, it's the most well-constructed song on here, just in terms of like showing off a little bit more like writing dynamics other than just playing as fast and as heavy as they can, which, believe me, they're fucking great at. But that song is a true blue standout, and I do love their cover of The Usurper, originally done by Celtic Frost. They nail it. They make it just as filthy as the original, if not more so. I just flat out dig this EP. I flat out dig this band. I mean, I do like Ghost, but this is the band I would say that anyone arguing that Tobias doesn't have any metal cred definitely needs to listen to this and Epitome of Darkness, because, well, you'll probably have to admit it that, yeah, no, he's got some, like, legit death metal cred. I'm not saying that's going to make you like Ghost or anything like that. Like, if you hate Ghost, yeah, it's whatever. People don't have to like everything. So as divisive of a band as Ghost is with a lot of metal fans, this one, if you're a death metal fan, I think you'd appreciate it regardless of Tobias Forge being in it at all. So yeah, definitely check this out. Also, check out Epitome of Darkness. If you don't believe me, check out that retro review I did fucking forever ago. I love that album, and I'm super glad that I found this EP, so yeah, check it out. Ruiner, Hell is Empty. This is the second and possibly final album from this Baltimore-based hardcore act. I had heard about these guys from compilations, you know, for hardcore punk years ago, and I just never picked up any of their albums. I saw this one, figured give it a shot, and yeah, there might be a reason why this band broke up just in terms of like pure exhaustion, because I was looking at their Wikipedia. This band, in their first 2 years as a band, played over 200 shows. That's a lot. That would make me burnt the fuck out too. And honestly, I feel like I can kind of hear it in here because, you know, when it comes down to the vocals, they sound very exhausted, very desperate, like dudes gasping for air and screaming all the time. And it makes for a more like emotional listen, because a lot of this is just heavy, quick, to the point, leans a lot more on the punk side of hardcore, so I wouldn't say that this is metallic hardcore at all. In fact, it's very fast moving, almost like constant D beat. There are some more groovy sections, but you don't have that sort of like metallic chug to a lot of the songs. Like, you just get a lot of like ferocious down picking and the occasional spots of melody and like some dark introspective lyrics every now and then. And lyrically, while there's a lot of serious themes in here, it's done with like a fair dose of like self-awareness or like cynicism or sarcasm or just irreverence. On the song Dead Weight, the vocalist calls out to the assholes, fuckers, and rejects, which at that point I stood at attention because pretty sure I'm all three of those. And that is actually carryover from a lot of their other work. I'm just gonna read off some of it. Their first album was called Prepare to be Let Down. Man, have I told people that before. One of their EPs is called What Could Possibly Go Right? And they actually put out a comp called I Heard These Dudes Are Assholes. Yeah, no, that's fucking great self-deprecation there. But musically, there's a lot of cool stuff in here. The oddly titled Part 1 and Part 2, both of those work as, I guess, one larger song, namely because of the titles, but they do actually work musically as one song. Part 1 is more dreary, more somber, like it's kind of slow and moody, and then Part 2 erupts into a giant hardcore shit fit and kind of just explodes with energy. And the song Meat actually has some really good clean playing on it too, like, you know, very somber and withdrawn, but I kind of like that sort of ebb and flow in here where it kind of goes down to the depths of depression and it just explodes into rage, because this is definitely very dark and emotional and probably personal to some degree, even despite the occasional like fun banter and song title or album title they have. Now, I said this is their final album. They did break up not long after this was released, but they did reunite in 2017 for shows. I don't know if they're still around after that, but hopefully they get back together and do some stuff, because I thought this was really solid. Definitely in the vein of bands like Wilhelm Scream. I would say that's pretty damn comparable, or Comeback Kid and shit like that. If you just like flat out hardcore and, you know, a fair dose of melody and some irreverence along the way too, definitely check this out. Pretty solid listen. Runemagick, Darkness, Death, Doom. This is the 6th album from this Swedish Death Doom act. Pretty much fucking legends as far as I'm concerned when it comes down to Death Doom. Features current and former members of Sacramentum and Catatonia. I actually picked up an album of theirs down in Florida last time in Venom, and I really fucking dug that one. I saw this one and was like, well, I'm just gonna go for it, why not, because the last one was awesome, and man, this album is absolutely incredible. This is so atmospheric and dark and riffy. Man, I pretty much love this entire thing. You have great atmospheric elements with like storms and ghostly whispers, but man, the riffs on here are absolutely fantastic. And I like how the death and the doom get separated very often. Like, you have some more death metal tracks like Ones of Kali, Doomed, and one of the last tracks, Winter, have way more pronounced death metal sections. The riffs get a lot chuggier. There's like some D beats. It gets a little bit closer to, I mean, I guess like Swedish death metal in general. But songs like Ancient Incantations and Darken Thy Flesh get flat out disgustingly doomy with like more like droning riffs, like kind of like single chugs, God, the guitar tone is so damn heavy on here. The vocals are absolutely fucking perfect on here. A lot of them are like more low roars, but you get the occasional higher scream on here. And generally with Death Doom, that means you get some longer songs, but these songs are packed with really cool dynamics, like stuff that just really jumps out at you. The transitions are really smooth, and they transition well between songs, because this whole album flows absolutely amazingly. And for as disgustingly heavy as it gets, there's a lot of great melodies on here. There's even an intro and an outro on here that honestly I don't necessarily mind. Even the instrumental DDD, I give you a hint what that fucking stands for, actually has like a cool bass lead on it, and man, this bass tone just fucking snarls. It pretty much does everything well. I really could not think of anything I didn't like on here. None of the songs dragged. All of them were just dark, but really interesting. And again, the whole album flows so damn well. When it latches onto that doom sound, it becomes very ominous and oppressive, but man, there's some chugs on here that are just some of the heaviest fucking things I've heard in a while. The Venom, holy shit, that song is ridiculously heavy, and man, the bottom heavy chugs that drive that song, just flat out disgusting. I dig the living shit out of this. This is absolutely amazing work. Definitely going to be getting more Runemagick. Actually, I may or may not have got some Runemagick in Denver. I'm kind of teasing a little bit there as to what's to come. But yeah, outside of even that one, I definitely plan on getting more Runemagick, because everything I've heard from them has been absolutely amazing. If you have not checked out this band for whatever reason and you're a big fan of Death Doom, like, you know, Hooded Menace and shit like that, check this out. It is absolutely fucking amazing. Sarcophago I.N.R.I. This is the debut album from this Brazilian black and thrash / death thrash band. Hyper influential album, pretty much influenced a good chunk of second wave black metal. I know that I think Euronymous was a big fan of this band. And this falls right in line with Sepultura's early work, Morbid Vision, Bestial Devastation. Fast, unhinged, aggressive as hell, though I think this is better than early Sepultura, at least like Morbid Visions and Bestial Devastation. While this is still frantic and heavy and just, you know, ridiculous in terms of like the energy that is pouring out of it, it feels less sloppy than, say, early Sepultura, where they were just playing as hard and as fast as they can, and, you know, even like the guitars were kind of out of tune. Even though this is a 2021 remaster, you still get all of the raw nature of this album captured, even though you get like an alternate cover in here, which honestly I like this alternate cover. It's a good clear picture of the band and their early look. A lot of this is just fast and vicious. You can really hear the black metal influence, especially on the title track in here, but the one that's the big standout on here for me is Nightmare. I think that one being a little bit slower, a little bit more moody, it just has like a vibe on it that doesn't come in and just slam you immediately. It takes time to build up the creepiness and all that shit, and it's just a fucking amazing song. Christ's Death is another standout in there. I like the clean intro and the more gurgly vocals that come in, and there's like kind of a flat out doomy ending to it, like almost like Celtic Frost, which I know Celtic Frost was like a huge influence to these guys too. Celtic Frost was like a huge influence to like all extreme metal, but they execute it like super well. Death thrash I think is awesome because it's kind of a standout because it has notably different vocals, and yeah, it kind of has like a proto death metal sound. Like it's fast, aggressive, but the riffs are again more like close to death metal. Like this is them kind of like paying homage to maybe like Possessed at this point. And I have to bring up the song Ready to Fuck, or Ready to Fuck E on here. That's weird. I didn't notice that. It came up as Ready to Fuck on my computer. It's Ready to Fuck E, F-U-C-K-Y, which is the real question. Why is there a Y at the end of that song title? That's just strange. Maybe they were going for like a question mark, like Ready to Fuck, and they didn't. I don't know. It's kind of odd. Though not as odd as the end of The Last Slaughter, which heavy, dynamic, evil-sounding song. In fact, like the longer songs here, I think are the big standouts for me. But it just ends in carnival music, and yeah, it's just sort of a strange little ending to an otherwise really awesome album. Now, on this remaster, they did throw some live tracks on here, but they are unbelievably muddy. In fact, I don't think I could even hear the drums on the live tracks in here. But honestly, like, the appeal of this is the energy. Like, the fast, unhinged fucking brutality of it. Yeah, like, it's a little bit sloppy, but it's still pretty well done. Now, I'll be honest, I prefer their second full-length, Loss of Scourge. I think that's absolutely fantastic and super underrated. But this is awesome in its own right, albeit, like, very different. But yeah, if you've never checked out this album, I strongly recommend it. I had listened to it before, I just never bought it. I saw it, was like, yeah, it's time to actually get this one, because honestly, early Sarcophago was like the only, Sarcophago I liked. Like, I kind of cut off after the Loss of Scourge, and yeah, there's a good reason, because a lot of the stuff after that is really hit or miss. But this, super influential, pretty fucking awesome album. Strongly recommend checking it out. Alright, we got a couple here by Rush. Pretty sure no one's ever heard of this band. Anyway, Canadian prog rock trio, probably one of the best trios in music in general. I mean, they're fucking incredible, or at least they were. This is their second album, Fly By Night. This is their 12th album, Hold Your Fire. Could not be more different, definitely capturing two different eras of the band here. Fly By Night, pretty much a classic. Second album, this is where Neil Peart joined the band, became their drummer and their lyricist, which is still a really interesting thing about the band, like, because no one ever counts on the drummer for anything other than fucking drumming. Outside of Rush, I can't think of many other drummers that do the majority of the lyric writing. But this album is awesome. Straight up, like, 70s rock. This is where they start to traipse more into proggy territory, especially on songs like Bytor and The Snow Dog, which I think is a giant fucking standout on here. The longest track on here, and it definitely explores a lot of dynamics. The bridge on it is absolutely fantastic. It's spacey and weird, and, the song structure is wild, and Neil's presence on drums is immediately felt. The original drummer, Rutsey? Something Rutsey? Shit, I can't think of his damn name. He was a solid drummer, but Neil brought a lot more flavor to the table as far as, like, accents and clever fills and clever rhythms. And again, he was writing some really awesome lyrics. But this was just like the tip of the iceberg for him, really. But musically, this is still very centered on just like flat out 70s rock. Still a lot of Led Zeppelin worship on here. I mean, you can definitely hear it on Anthem, which is fucking fantastic song. Fly By Night, of course, the title track is fucking huge in here. But yeah, solid album. Most people fucking know this one. Like, it's one of their most famous album covers, too. At this point, I do think Geddy Lee's vocals are up there a little bit too high. Like, when he started dropping down a little bit more, it felt more comfortable to me, because, I mean, all right, unfortunately, like, when it comes down to people, like, not liking Rush, generally the main complaint are Geddy Lee's vocals. And on the earlier stuff, I can kind of hear that. I actually heard someone say that Geddy Lee sounds like Robert Plant sucking down helium. And to a degree, I can hear that here, but I fucking love the songs in here. And when it comes down to the production, it's very warm, very analog, and very guitar-driven. Alex Lifeson's always been probably the most underrated member of Rush. I mean, because, Geddy Lee's an incredible fucking bassist and songwriter, and Neil was Neil. But Alex has great fucking riffs on here. Now, this one was the last one I needed in terms of their 80s era. I have everything in that era, and that era was the era that I grew up with. I pretty much started with Permanent Waves and Moving Pictures, and that's how I got into Rush. Now, this one sits between two albums that I feel very differently about. Power Windows came before this one. I love that album. I think it's a fucking super underrated album. And then after this came Presto, which I am not much of a fan of. In fact, that's like one of my least favorite albums by Rush. And this one definitely is closer to Power Windows. Lots of lush synth work. The synths, to a degree, almost kind of overtake this album. I do think the guitars are a little bit more prominent than they were on Power Windows. But a lot of this is about that lush 80s atmosphere and big 80s hooks, especially on Time Stands Still. What a great fucking song. They had Amy Mann do backup vocals on that with Geddy Lee, and man, just fucking great songwriting on there. Force 10, the openers, fucking awesome. Prime Mover, absolutely fantastic. And Lock and Key, I love the funky bass line that plays underneath the riffs on that. Just really excellent stuff. And in terms of like their 80s stuff, like this might be a little bit lower than say like some of the bigger ones. Like it's not quite as good as Signals or Grayson or Pressure in my opinion, but this is still really good. And unfortunately, I think this came at a point where this was a bit of a decline in terms of their popularity. I think this was their lowest debut on the billboards since, maybe like Caress of Steel, I think. It did not do well commercially, though I think it is just a solid album through and through. I've always heard mixed things about this album, but honestly, I ended up digging it overall. It may get a little bit lost in the sauce with some of the synths and atmosphere, because I do miss hearing Alex's guitars a little bit more out front, but overall, solid album. So yeah, both these two very different eras of Rush. Really don't need to go into this band very much, because I think anyone that has listened to rock music in the last 40 years or so probably knows about this band. But yeah, both of these really fucking good. Check them out. And finally, we have a pair here from Sarcasm. We have their first album, Burial Dimensions, and their second album, Within the Sphere of Ethereal Minds. And the history of this band is kind of interesting. Apparently, they formed back in the early 90s, and this was originally intended to come out in 1994, but they broke up before it was released. And then they reformed, I believe, in the early 2010s, and then finally released what would have been their 1994 album in 2015. Now, this band started off as a straight-up death metal act out of Sweden, and then they slowly sort of shifted to like blackened death metal, melodic black metal. There's a lot of dissection energy, especially on this one. This is very cold, icy riffing, lots of great fucking melodies. In fact, there are guitar harmonies aplenty on here. The production is notably more raw. There's really good bass work in here. In fact, I could have sworn I heard some fretless bass on here. But honestly, like the vibe of this album, the whole feel of it, I feel like this album cover should be blue or purple. Like, it really has that sort of like kind of sacramentum sort of melody peppered in with like thrashier moments. There's some really good death metal breakdowns, like the slower songs in here definitely get a little bit more towards their death metal side, but overall, like, this is very fast and very much along the lines of like Necrophobic and Dissection especially. The big standout for me on here was Scattered Ashes. I love that bending riff that starts it off, and honestly it stays like a little bit more slow. Like, there's some really good like melancholy keyboards on Dark that kind of start off a little bit like more gothic and, you know, again a little bit slower, but that one eventually does erupt into just flat out aggro, thrashy, black metal, Black and Death. I don't know, this one I didn't find that much death metal on, but I did find a little bit on Pile of Bodies. There's almost like a little bit of a Death Doom tinge to it. There's great haunting lead melodies all over here. I would say this one is definitely more of a black metal album overall, with death metal and thrash metal kind of used as like a bit of a seasoning on here. Really solid album. Now, this also includes all of their demos, I believe, and the demo versions of the songs that would end up on here are really fantastic. In fact, they did a great job of remastering those. They sound almost as good as the album tracks. But their early stuff, the more death metal stuff on like the Dark demo or In Hate demo from 93 and 92, that stuff is more along the lines of like Stockholm death metal. Like, it has that sort of dirty sounding HM2 tone, like Nail Her Up, the more death metal version of Pile of Bodies on there. You know, it has a totally different vibe. Like, the vocals are a lot deeper, the production being more raw and swampy and just kind of more brutal overall. So it's really cool they actually reissued this as a 2-disc one, because you really get like a sense of evolution for this band that broke up and then reformed and just really kind of just started going at this point in like 2015 or 2012 or, you know, again, like in the early 2010s. Now, this one being their second album, which, you know, this one technically would have come out in 94. This came out in 2017. This is vastly different than this one. Namely, production's way more modern, more of a thrashy bite to this one. This actually almost sounds more like a thrashy melodic death metal band. The songs are very explosive. They jump right out at you, but they jump out at you with not only aggression, but melody. Scars of a Land Forgotten is definitely one that stuck out to me. Great galloping melodies, huge, like, kind of hypocrisy level hooks. Like, there's a lot of, like, that classic Gothenburg sound sort of mixed in, albeit, like, notably more fast and aggro, except for the track A Black Veil for Earth. That is, I flat out like melodic death doom song, like very much in the vein of like My Dying Bride and Paradise Lost. It has clean melodies, deeper vocals overall. It's the slowest track. It is morose and oppressive as hell. A completely different vibe than a lot of this, because there are a lot of like big triumphant melodies on here, like lots of soaring stuff, but it's paired off with like more aggressive vocals and just more aggressive playing, but the vibe is there. That song, A Black Veil for the Earth, there's no hope there. Like, yeah, that's just pure misery and melody. But yeah, I really dig both of these, but both vastly different albums. This one, notably more short songs, I think, and I think that more concise listen, whereas this one was over 40 minutes, this one's only about 35. It just makes for a more straight ahead listen, and honestly, the songs, there's enough variety in the riff work and the melodies to make them really stand out. This is really solid stuff, and I think now I have to get some more Sarcasm, as if this channel needed any more Sarcasm in general. But yeah, both of these I think are excellent. If you like bands like Hypocrisy, Necrophobic, Dissection, maybe early In Flames in there too. I don't know, it's kind of a mixed bag. It depends on which one you want to go for. I recommend them both, but for different reasons. You're going to get way more black metal on this one than you will on here, but you're going to get tons of cool, thrashy mellow death on here. So either way, I think you're winning. Main point is, check them out, form your own opinions. You might really end up digging these. I know I fucking did. And yeah, that will knock out this collection update here. And believe me, I got to work on the next one, because as soon as I'm done with that one, we're done with Florida. Like, that's fucking it. And I think I have enough for one more collection update for Florida, and then we can move on to Denver finally, because I bought a lot of shit there too. But yeah, maybe in between Denver, I might do another States Metal. I still haven't decided on that one. I'm kind of at this point where I really want to get through all the stuff that I got in the past. That way I'm fully caught up, because like in between there, like doing reviews and such, yeah, there's just not enough time in the day. Either way, you guys are going to get a lot more content and a lot more stuff that I'm going to cover. So I think that's kind of a win. So if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link to thrallsmetal.com. Our Patreon link is there, as well as our store, which eventually we will be loading up on stuff. I think we're just pretty much getting money together. We just, you know, got to get that down payment down for shirts, and then we can start selling shirts. And possibly some other stuff too. The main thing is we want to get some shirts out there again, because we really like this design we have, and I'm pretty sure you guys will too. We also still have our 15,000 subscriber giveaway going on. We are less than 100 away from it. All you have to do, if you have not commented on this video, is comment on the video linked down below. It'll also be playing automatically on our channel, then you are entered. Once we hit the magic number of 15K, I will do a video announcing the winner after I do a little comment randomizer, and we can all celebrate that we made it another milestone that I never thought we would hit in a million years. Again, you know, this is the thank you part, but I got to do it because I am eternally thankful to you guys for getting us to the level that we are at. We 100% could not have got to this point without you guys. So yeah, you guys are essentially the backbone of this channel, and we appreciate the living shit out of you guys. So plenty more coming in the future. And with that, I will thank you all once again, and we will catch you later.